Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, depending on where in the world you are joining me from. I am Illuminati, and this is the Crypto and Cognac podcast show, as always, live every Thursday, 7 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time, sharp, right? Right here, YouTube. And as always, we are here to make sense of this crazy cryptic world of cryptocurrency. And if I'm here, check the comments because Steven there. Check the glass because Henny there, right? So pour yourself a drink, settle in, roll out your questions, roll out your comments, and let's chop it up. Today, we are talking about the Bitcoin Backroad, right? That is my assessment of what we're going to be talking about today. So I'll have to do some work to break that down for you. But before we jump into it, housekeeping, as always. Steven knows it. If you've been here before, you know it. But for those who's their first time, I'm going to repeat it, right? I am not a financial advisor. This is not a financial advisory podcast. Nothing that you hear here this evening, next evening, or any evening that has passed should be misconstrued as financial advice. We don't do that here, right? Same way we have our yak is the same way we have our crypto conversations, and that is the ICE rule: information, conversation, education. I share a little bit with you, you share a little bit with me, and hopefully on the other side of things, right, we come away with a little bit more awareness about what is going on in this crazy world of blockchain, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, stable coins, meme coins, NFTs, right? Hopefully you learn a little bit more so that you can make your way through this emerging financial world, this emerging financial infrastructure. And today, we are going to dive a little bit into the idea of crypto, Bitcoin particularly, but crypto by extension, as a tool for non-censorship, as a tool for navigating the world of sanctions, because what we are seeing happening in the world right now in the Middle East is raising again questions, concerns, commentary around the role of having a parallel financial system, right? So grab a drink. Now, oftentimes these topics, these incidents, these instances that are happening across the geopolitical world, we can't connect with them, right? They don't seem relevant to us. So I wanted to kind of break it down. Now, I want to make it clear that this particular discussion is neither for or against, and more trying to just present the information in terms of what is possible, what is out there, and how Bitcoin is playing a part in this emerging financial infrastructure framework, global financial infrastructure framework. So let's bring it back home first, right? So imagine you wake up tomorrow, you check your bank account, and all your funds there, but they're frozen, right? You can't get access to it. Not because of fraud, not because of a mistake, but simply because of where you live in the world, and who your country might be in a conflict with. Now that seems strange, because we have not experienced that here in the Caribbean particularly, or much in the Western world. But if you zoom out, imagine that happening to not just you by yourself, but an entire country. And that's not a hypothetical situation. That is the reality of modern finance. So that is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to get into it. We're going to look at two examples of where that has impacted entire countries. And we're going to look at Bitcoin and what is the reality, right? So whether it's a financial system by design, or is it a financial system that was built to replace the current financial system, or whether or not it is something else that is expected to run parallel to that existing financial system to provide relief. So I'm gonna draw reference to the existing financial system as being the highway, the financial highway, and we're gonna look at Bitcoin as the topic of the conversation says, the financial backroad, right? For everybody else. So what happens when the system or a system like Bitcoin is used to bypass restrictions, sanctions, and controls placed or placed in the traditional financial system? And we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna use two examples to really discuss this. We're gonna talk about Russia under sanctions after their conflict with Ukraine, and we're gonna look at what is evolving right now in Iran and the Strait of Hormuz. So, like I said, we're gonna look at highways and backroads. So think of the global financial system like a network of highways. So big banks are basically the toll booths, central banks are the regulators, and the SWIFT system is the traffic controllers. Now, if a country gets sanctioned, it's basically being blocked from the highway, right? So it has no access, no movement, no trade. At least they're not able to do that easily. Now, Bitcoin, as something different, is it is not a highway, right? It is more like a network of backroads that anyone can access. So there's no tolls, there's no central authority directing traffic, there's no signal point to shut it down, but it also cannot be blocked off at any one point, right? So like I said, network of backroads. Now, what people mean when they say that Bitcoin is censorship resistant, it doesn't mean that it's invisible. It doesn't mean that it's untraceable. Actually, it's the exact opposite. What it means is that there is no off switch. There's no way for somebody to just decide to turn it off or to block someone's access to it, right? No one entity, no one government, no one group, no one institution, no one person can block any other person, any other institution, any other country from utilizing the Bitcoin network. So let's look at Russia. When Russia faced international sanction, access to global banking was tightened, not just for the government, but for all the individuals. We saw like I'm a big F1 fan. I'm a big football fan. When Russia experienced sanctions, the owner of Chelsea had to give up his ownership stake in Chelsea Football Club. The Russian Grand Prix was no longer included in the F1 calendar. So even people who were not directly a part or had direct influence over the government and what the government was doing and the decisions that the government was taking felt the fallout from this based on the sanctions that were placed on Russia by the international community. Now, one of the ways that this is done is that most international trade is done in US dollars, right? So US dollar transactions were restricted, financial highways started closing off, so all the intermediary banks would not do business with people from Russia. So what did they have to do? They basically started trading not just in cryptocurrency but in other currencies, right? And building their own internal system to run parallel to the global financial system. And they started experimenting with crypto, including Bitcoin, right? Now, like I said, Bitcoin did not replace their financial system, right? But what they had the opportunity to do is utilize it as a side road for some international trade. Their central bank started holding reserves in Bitcoin, because what we've seen is that as trust amongst countries continue to increase, no country is particularly comfortable holding reserves of any other country in such a way that if that was to be cut off, they would no longer be able to survive, basically. So, in the absence of a fiat currency that you can trust, where do you turn? And we are seeing more and more nation states turning to Bitcoin, stablecoins to a lesser extent, but Bitcoin, because there is no central authority responsible for managing and controlling the Bitcoin network. So nobody can cut you out of that network. No. Where there have been struggles is that in terms of handling large scale trade efficiently, obviously we know crypto in general, Bitcoin by extension, has a lot of volatility. So managing the volatility around that. And then obviously there is still a negative connotation around the utilization of cryptocurrency. So obviously managing the global scrutiny around the use of Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies in general, is something that any country that seeks to utilize these backroads has to contend with, right? But like I said, what Bitcoin offers is an option, right? It doesn't remove necessarily the dependence on traditional finance, but it offers a back road. You understand? In the event that you end up jammed up, you can have certain activities carried out. You could have certain transactions. You could do trade with certain persons once they are willing to accept Bitcoin as well. And it allows you to continue to operate, even if it's for a short period or at a reduced scale, to be able to survive in those circumstances. Now, let's look at what is happening right now in Iran, based on the US-Israeli war against Iran. We have seen that as a recourse, and they've pretty much weaponized the Strait of Hormuz, where 1/5 of the world's energy passes through. And what they've done as a means of continuing to generate revenue for their country, as a means of continuing to generate revenue in a way that is not controlled by the US or some of their global partners, is that they have asked that in order for ships to have safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz, a toll will be required to be paid. And this toll is not being requested in US dollars or through the Western banking system. What they've asked for is Bitcoin or Chinese yuan. Now, China is one of the largest trading partners with Iran, so that makes sense. But for all their other trade, I guess they have decided that, you know what, we are going to be demanding that our payment be accessible in Bitcoin. I'm hearing that they've also asked for stable coins. Now, stable coins are cryptocurrencies, but there are central authorities in control of stable coins. So I don't know if that is real in terms of their requesting for stable coins, because obviously Circle, Tether, those are the two largest stable coin issuers. They may, because of their own compliance and regulatory obligations to Western governments, they may have the ability to freeze funds that are being transacted in their currency. So I think obviously Bitcoin will be the one that is majorly in demand. And whether you agree with Iran, whether you support Iran and their stance, the reality is that, again, with the financial highway being cut off, they have turned to the global financial network of backroads that is Bitcoin to be able to continue to exist as a country, to be able to develop or redevelop all the infrastructure that has been damaged in the war, to start rebuilding. And the fact of the matter is that they would not be able to do so utilizing traditional banks, wire transfers. Obviously, that is going to put them in a very, very tricky situation. So we have seen, again, them turning to this financial, what is the right word I'm looking for? This financial safeguard that is Bitcoin. And I think we're going to see more and more nation states, more and more institutions, more and more governments. Even when you look at the Trump group, the Trump family, Eric Trump basically has said over and over the reason why he got into crypto, the reason he got into Bitcoin, is after his dad's last presidency. There was a lot of attacks on their family, them being debanked, and he sought out an alternative for them to be able to continue to maintain access to trade and all these kind of things. So what we are seeing is, in a world where individuals, institutions, and even nation states cannot trust the financial infrastructure framework that is in place, that Bitcoin cryptocurrency is becoming more and more prevalent as a use case, and is becoming more and more adopted, right? So this has always been one of the use cases. Like I said, I'm not gonna say whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. It is just what it is. These are the facts around it. We have a situation where people no longer, more than ever before, trust the traditional infrastructure tools that were in place. So in addition to Bitcoin, in addition to cryptocurrency, we're seeing people buying more gold, silver, a lot more commodities are being held in reserve, because more and more people are losing faith in the traditional fiat infrastructure. Like we said, like I always say, adoption is inevitable, and more from the smallest man on the street to the biggest countries in the world, they are realizing the value of having one unique infrastructure platform in which everybody has access. Just like the internet, we are seeing a new decentralized value sharing protocol that is the blockchain, that is Bitcoin, for everyone to use. So what next? We don't know, right? Does the utilization of Bitcoin by Iran, by Russia, turn more and more regulators against cryptocurrency? We don't know. Is this the start of more widespread acceptance? We don't know. Time will tell. But one thing is for sure, and two things for certain: adoption is inevitable. Right? That's my time this evening, guys. I hope you all have a blessed one. Thanks for joining me. Stevie, blessings and blessings and blessings. Guys, have a good one. Illuminati, OUT, out.